Welcome back for our second deep dive into presidential inaugural addresses.
Oh, yes.
After Washington's first, I'm really curious to see what his second has in store for us.
Right.
Especially since, this one's from 1793.
Okay.
So just 4 years later.
Yeah.
We have the insights of Dr. Jareau Almeyda.
Wonderful.
Dr. Almeyda brings a unique perspective to this.
Okay.
Not just from his professional background, but also from his, deep interest in history and his ability to kind of connect seemingly disparate ideas.
I see.
He's helped us pull together data from sentiment analysis
Interesting.
to keyword frequencies
Okay.
and even historical voting demographics.
Oh, wow.
It's a lot to unpack.
Yeah.
But I have a feeling it's going to reveal some fascinating insights into Washington's second term and the state of the nation in 1793.
It's certainly a pivotal period, that's for sure,
Right.
in early American history.
Yeah.
The echoes of the American Revolution were still quite strong.
Uh-huh.
The Constitution was in its early stages of, being tested, really.
Sure.
And America's role on the world stage was only just beginning to take shape.
Okay, so let's start with the big picture here.
Okay.
What were some of the most striking statistics that kind of jumped out at you from the data?
Well, one of the first things that caught my eye was the population data.
Okay.
In 1790, right before Washington's second term,
Yeah.
the U.S. population was just under 4 million.
Really?
Yeah, to put that in perspective.
Okay.
That's smaller than some cities today.
That's incredible.
Okay.
It's hard to imagine the United States being so small,
I know.
It really puts into context the scale of the challenges that Washington was facing.
Absolutely.
Wow.
And it's even more striking, I think, when we consider that the 1790 census didn't even count Native Americans.
Oh, right.
So the nation Washington was addressing was not only small,
Right.
but also far less diverse than the America we know today.
Yeah, speaking of diversity, the voting demographics from that time are also quite revealing, I think.
Yeah.
Only white men age 21 and older who owned land could vote.
That's right.
I mean, that means that Washington was speaking to a very specific and limited audience.
That's a crucial point.
Yeah.
It raises questions about whose voices were being represented
Mm-hmm.
and whose were being excluded in the early republic,
Right.
and how that might have shaped the political landscape and the direction of the nation.
It's like we're looking through a window into a completely different world.
Yeah.
So we've got a small, less diverse nation with a very restricted electorate.
Right.
What else was happening in 1793 that might have influenced Washington's address?
Well, on a domestic front, the Northwest Indian War was raging on the frontier. This conflict, which lasted from 1785 to 1795, was essentially about the U.S. expanding its control westward and the resistance from various Native American tribes.
So even after the Revolution, there were still significant internal tensions and conflicts.
That's right.
What about America's place on the world stage? What was happening internationally that might have been on Washington's mind?
Well, the French Revolution, which had begun in 1789,
Yep.
was in full swing.
Right.
While the U.S. had initially declared neutrality, tensions with France were brewing, eventually leading to the Quasi-War a few years later.
Wow, so much was happening, both at home and abroad.
Yeah.
Imagine trying to lead a nation through all of that with like an average life expectancy of around 39 years old.
I know.
Talk about pressure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that brings us to the speech itself.
Okay.
When we ran the sentiment analysis, the overall tone was surprisingly tentative.
I was expecting boldness and confidence, given that it was his second term.
Yeah.
But you're right. There's a lot of I hope, I trust.
Yeah.
Almost a sense of humility in the face of these challenges.
It's a stark contrast to the assuredness we see in some later inaugural addresses.
Sure.
What's fascinating is that Washington, despite his stature and accomplishments, seems acutely aware of the fragility of this new nation.
There's a line where he says, I have been too much swayed by a grateful remembrance of former instances or by an affectionate sensibility.
Right.
It's as if he's acknowledging his own limitations.
Yeah.
And the potential for his emotions to cloud his judgment.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And that's where his use of language becomes so crucial.
Right.
Dr. Almeyda, with his background in information systems and his meticulous attention to detail, points out something really interesting about the way Washington structures his arguments.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
Yeah.
What does Washington's language tell us?
Well, Dr. Almeyda sees a deliberate laying out of arguments,
Okay.
almost like plotting points on a map.
Wow.
It's reminiscent of Washington's experience as a surveyor.
Right.
This wasn't just a politician giving a speech,
Yeah.
but a leader crafting a vision with almost scientific precision.
I love that analogy.
Yeah.
So even in his tentative tone, there's this deliberate, almost architectural approach to building this nation.
Right.
What were some of the key themes that he focused on?
Unsurprisingly, the Constitution.
Right.
Government and law are major themes.
Okay.
But there's also significant emphasis on public good, virtue and happiness,
Sure.
even providential agency.
Okay.
It hints at the philosophical foundation he's trying to lay for the country.
So it's not just about structures and laws,
No.
but about values, morality,
Yeah.
almost a sense of divine purpose guiding the nation.
Exactly. And those concepts, along with his focus on the economy and course of nature, as Dr. Almeyda highlights, resonate even today.
Okay, I'm curious.
Yeah.
How does Washington's second inaugural address connect to the challenges that we face in the present day?
It might seem like a stretch at first.
Okay.
But Dr. Almeyda draws parallels between Washington's concerns
Yeah.
and the sustainability challenges we face today.
Wow.
It highlights how these core issues of balancing individual liberty
Right.
with collective well-being are timeless.
That's fascinating. It seems like Washington, back in 1793, was already grappling with questions that are still relevant today.
Absolutely.
It's amazing how these historical figures can speak to us across centuries.
I know, it's amazing.
But we've only scratched the surface here.
Yeah.
We've got so much more data to dive into.
That's right.
Including keyword analysis, emotional scores, and more. Stay tuned as we continue our deep dive into George Washington's second inaugural address.
Let's take a quick break. Want to equip your child with the skills of top global consultants? Don't let them fall behind. Raising Tomorrow's Leaders, The Consultant's Mindset by Dr. Jareau Almeyda is your guide to fostering essential skills in your children for their lifelong success. Available now on Amazon. Okay, welcome back.
All right, let's shift our focus to the heart of the speech and see what insights we can glean from the keyword analysis.
Right.
Remember, we're looking at the terms that appear most frequently and their relevance scores to get a sense of what Washington truly emphasized.
That makes sense.
So what were the top contenders?
Yeah. What words really jumped out at you?
Well, as you might expect, United States takes the lead with a relevance score of 0.988319.
Wow.
It appears quite prominently throughout his second inaugural address.
That's not surprising considering, it was his second inaugural address as president of the newly formed United States.
Right.
It makes sense that he'd be talking about it a lot.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But what's more interesting is the second highest scoring keyword, U.S. state, which comes in at 0.639774.
Yeah.
This points to the ongoing tension between federal power and states' rights.
Yeah.
A theme that was incredibly important in the early republic.
That classic push and pull between the central government and individual states.
Right.
It's fascinating to see how that dynamic was already playing out in those early years.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then we have another intriguing keyword that pops up with a score of 0.61274, British Empire.
Ooh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Remember, the American Revolution was less than a decade in the past at this point?
That's right.
Do you think that mention reflects lingering anxieties about the former colonial power? Or maybe a need to define the U.S. in contrast to its past?
It's a great question.
Yeah.
While we can't know for sure without delving deeper into the text and the historical context, it certainly adds another layer to our understanding of the speech.
Sure.
And this is where Washington's meticulous use of language, that almost surveyor-like precision that Dr. Almeyda pointed out, becomes so crucial.
Yeah.
He carefully positions the United States as a distinct entity founded on different principles than the British Empire.
It's like he's drawing a line in the sand saying, this is who we are and this is what we stand for.
Right.
It's a powerful statement of independence and self-determination.
Indeed.
Yeah.
And the keyword analysis also reveals his focus on solidifying the core concepts of this new republic. Words like government, constitution, and law are all prominent,
Right.
reflecting his efforts to establish a strong and stable foundation for the nation.
So he's both defining America's identity on the world stage
Yeah,
and building its governing framework at home.
that's right.
It's like he's working on two levels simultaneously.
Precisely.
Wow.
And that dual focus continues when we look at the emotional scores of the speech.
Okay.
Remember how we talked about the overall tentative tone
Mhm.
with a lot of "I hope" and "I trust"?
Yes, it definitely felt like cautious optimism rather than outright confidence.
Right.
Yeah.
But within that overall tone, there are some interesting spikes in other emotions.
Right.
For example, in the very first sentence, where Washington addresses Congress,
Right.
we see a detectable level of analytical sentiment.
So even as he's expressing hope and humility, there's a core of logic and reason driving his message. It's
Exactly.
like he's approaching the task of nation building with both his heart and his head.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that analytical undercurrent is consistent with what Dr. Almeyda observed about Washington's language.
Uh-huh.
It suggests a leader who, despite his anxieties about the future,
Right.
is approaching his duties with a clear head
Yeah.
and a deliberate strategy.
I'm starting to see a more complex picture of Washington emerge from this analysis.
Yeah,
He's not just the stoic, confident figure we often see in history books.
right.
There's a depth and a vulnerability to him that's really intriguing.
That complexity is what makes these early inaugural addresses so fascinating.
Yeah.
They weren't just speeches.
Right.
They were acts of creation. Washington was literally shaping the nation's identity, its values, its future with every word he spoke.
When you put it that way, it really makes you realize the weight of his words.
It really does.
Okay, so we've looked at keywords and overall emotional tone.
Right.
What other insights can we gain from the data?
Let's zoom in on specific sentences and see what we can learn from their emotional nuances.
Okay.
There's a line where Washington talks about his duty requiring him to renounce pecuniary compensation
Oh, right.
for his service as president.
Oh, I remember that line.
Yeah,
It's a powerful statement, especially considering that he could have easily enriched himself through his position.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And the data shows a spike in tentative sentiment in that specific sentence,
Mhm.
coupled with a notable absence of any other strong emotional tones.
That's interesting. So
Yeah.
it's not about boasting or moral grandstanding.
Right.
It's a simple, almost understated statement of fact
Mhm.
delivered with humility.
Exactly. And that, I think, is key to understanding Washington's leadership style. It's not about flamboyant displays
Yeah.
or self-promotion,
Right.
but about quiet determination,
Uh,
a steadfast commitment to duty, even when it means personal sacrifice.
It makes you wonder if his experiences during the revolution, the hardships he faced,
Yeah,
shaped his approach to leadership.
it could have.
A sense of responsibility
Yeah,
and a willingness to put the needs of the nation above his own.
it's certainly a possibility.
Yeah,
And it's amazing how much depth we can uncover just by looking at the data.
it is.
It's like we're peeling back layers of history and getting a glimpse into Washington's mind.
You know, I'm also struck by how much we can learn from the silences in the data. Like you mentioned, the absence of certain emotions.
Right.
The lack of grandiosity in his language tells us just as much as what's present.
That's a great observation.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that data analysis isn't just about finding patterns and trends,
Right.
but also about being attuned to the gaps and the nuances, and sometimes what's not said can be just as revealing as what I said.
This has been incredibly insightful.
Yeah, it has.
I feel like we've gained a much deeper understanding of both Washington
Uh-huh.
and the challenges facing the early republic.
It's amazing.
But before we move on, I'm curious to hear more about Dr. Almeyda's insights,
Yeah.
especially his perspective on the connection between Washington's concerns and modern-day sustainability challenges.
Absolutely. Let's delve into that aspect next and see how Dr. Almeyda's unique perspective illuminates this historical document in a new light. It's fascinating how Dr. Almeyda connects Washington's focus on the economy and course of nature to our modern sustainability challenges.
Yeah, that connection wasn't immediately obvious to me, I have to admit.
Right.
Could you elaborate on what he sees there?
Well, Dr. Almeyda argues that Washington, as a farmer and a leader who had witnessed firsthand the impact of both nature and human activity, understood the delicate balance
Okay.
between economic growth and environmental stewardship. Even back then, there were concerns about deforestation,
Right.
soil erosion, and the depletion of natural resources.
It's a really insightful perspective, I think.
Yeah.
It makes you realize that concerns about the environment and sustainability aren't new.
Right.
They've been
Yeah.
woven into the fabric of American thought since the very beginning.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Dr. Almeyda points to specific passages in the address
Right.
where Washington emphasizes the need for responsible land management,
Uh-huh.
the importance of agriculture,
Right.
and the interconnectedness of human actions and natural consequences.
It's like he was already warning us
Yeah.
about the potential dangers of unchecked growth and exploitation of resources.
Right.
He seemed to understand that true prosperity couldn't come at the expense of the natural world.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And that's why Dr. Almeyda sees Washington's second inaugural address
Okay.
as not just a historical document, but a call to action that resonates even today. He argues that Washington's message is more relevant than ever
Right.
in our current era of climate change and environmental degradation.
It's a powerful reminder that that the challenges we face today have deep roots,
Yeah.
and that the choices we make now will have long-lasting consequences.
That's right.
So what can we learn from Washington's approach to these issues?
Right.
How can we apply his wisdom to the challenges of the 21st century?
Well, Dr. Almeyda suggests that Washington's emphasis on public good and his call for unity and collaboration offer valuable guidance.
Okay.
He argues that we need to move beyond partisan divides and work together to find solutions that benefit both present and future generations.
So it's about recognizing that we're all in this together,
Yes,
and that our individual actions have a collective impact.
precisely. And that's where Washington's legacy as a unifier, as a leader who could bring people together
Yeah.
around a common purpose, becomes so crucial.
It's inspiring to think that we can draw strength and wisdom from these early leaders as we navigate the complex challenges of our own time.
I agree.
It's like they're still speaking to us across the centuries, offering guidance and encouragement.
I think that's a beautiful way to put it.
Yeah.
And it brings us back to the core purpose of our deep dives into these inaugural addresses.
Right.
It's about more than just analyzing historical documents.
Sure.
It's about connecting with the past, understanding the enduring challenges
Right.
of governance and leadership, and seeking inspiration for the present and the future.
So as we wrap up our exploration of Washington's second inaugural address,
Okay.
what key takeaways would you say stand out the most?
For me, it's the combination of humility and determination that shines through in Washington's words. He was acutely aware of the challenges facing the new nation.
Right.
But he also had an unwavering belief in its potential and a steadfast commitment to building a better future.
And he understood that building a strong and prosperous nation required more than just sound policies and strong institutions.
That's right.
It also required a shared sense of purpose, a commitment to the common good,
Right.
and a willingness to put aside personal interest for the greater good.
I think you've captured it perfectly.
Yeah.
And those are values and principles that are just as relevant today as they were in Washington's time.
Well said. So there you have it, deep divers.
Yes.
George Washington's second inaugural address, a blueprint for a nation,
Right.
a call to action, and a timeless reminder of the importance of leadership, unity,
Yeah.
and a commitment to something larger than ourselves.
Absolutely.
We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive,
We have.
from the historical context to the key themes,
Yeah.
from the emotional nuances to the enduring relevance of Washington's message.
Right.
And we've seen how data analysis can help us uncover hidden depths and connect seemingly disparate ideas,
Yeah.
all while reminding us of the human stories behind the numbers.
I agree.
And this is just the beginning of our journey through presidential inaugural addresses.
Oh, yes.
We have so many more voices to explore,
Right.
so many more challenges to unpack,
That's right.
and so many more insights to uncover. So join us next time as we continue our deep dive into American history, exploring new perspectives, new ideas, and new possibilities. Until then, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep the conversation going.